So to begin, a little bit about myself. I am Cathy Reisenwitz. I'm a writer and sex worker. I've got bylines in TechCrunch, The Week, Bias Daily Base, etc. I'm a former sugar baby and current OnlyFans creator. And my Substack is where I write mostly about decriminalizing and destigmatizing all things sex. You can check it out at cathyreisenwitz.substack.com or Google Sex in the State. Right. So let's begin by defining our terms. Sex work is an umbrella term that encompasses any kind of erotic labor. So this can be strippers, fun sex operators, porn performers, sugar babies, pro-doms, and of course, full service sex workers. This is the term of art that sex workers prefer to older terms such as prostitute, that is out of favor. Another perfectly acceptable word is escorts. And this presentation is going to focus on the regulation of full service sex work. So I want to point out at the beginning that there is a difference between sex work and sex workers. A lot of people will say that they're against sex work as a concept or as an industry. That's fine, but the sex work industry doesn't really care what you think about it. I think the focus needs to be on which regulation models benefit sex workers the most. I want to go over some myths about sex work. One is that sex work is inherently exploitative. The reality is that any kind of work under scarcity is going to be inherently exploitative, right? We have an economic system that privileges employers over employees, and that is true regardless of which industry you work in. There's nothing inherently more exploitative about sex work than any kind of labor where supply exceeds demand, especially. So one interesting stat is that up to 90% of sex workers are parents. These are people who have chosen sex work over other forms of available labor, often because they can work shorter, more flexible hours, which is more compatible with parenthood. Sex workers also tend to be disproportionately neurodiverse and differently abled, which can make sex work a much more viable option for them than other forms of labor. Another myth is that sex work is inherently dangerous. But again, all work with insufficient labor protections is going to be inherently dangerous. For some reason, there's a lot of talk about what sex work does to sex workers' bodies. When, for example, people who work in warehouses often will have injuries that far exceed the injuries that laborers in sex work have to endure. Another myth is that sex work is inherently patriarchal. Again, any work in a patriarchy is going to be inherently patriarchal. The other problem with this myth is that it erases male sex workers, which can comprise up to 20% of sex work. This person that I have on the screen, his name is Trip Richards, and he's actually a trans man OnlyFans creator. And I would not think that he would agree with the statement that his creating for OnlyFans is somehow especially patriarchal. Sorry, my slides aren't fully loading. One thing that I wanted to bring up in this talk is that every harm associated with sex work can be directly tied to stigmatization and criminalization. Some of the harms of criminalization and stigmatization include the fact that sex workers under a criminalization model have criminal records that make it more difficult for them to enter different kinds of labor. Again, they don't have labor protection. So if they are in an unsafe work environment, there's no one that they can report that to. They have less ability to negotiate the terms of their labor. Sex workers can actually have the fact that they were carrying condoms used against them by prosecutors in sex work prosecutions. So it actually increases STI rates. And the way that laws against sex work are written and enforced tend to be transphobic and racist in impact. The three main regulation models are the Nordic Model, legalization, full decriminalization, and I'm running out of time. So I just want to briefly go over full decrim, the benefits. Empirical evidence shows that full decriminalization of sex work reduces sex trafficking, reduces STI transmission, reduces violence against sex workers, reduces incidents of labor violations, and makes it easiest for sex workers to transition out of sex work if they want to. If you want to know more, follow me on Twitter, Insta, OnlyFans, etc. Thank you so much.